We've only seen the public version so far, but here's what we can tell you. Government investigators seem sincerely baffled by what these things are. Today's report analyzed 144 separate sightings of UFOs by the U.S. military, but in only a single case could the government explain what it was.
So this is a Pentagon, this is a Department of Defense official saying, stop looking at UFOs because they're demonic?
Correct. This is a person I respected tremendously, very, very senior person. He's told me, he said, Lou, I want you to stop doing this. I said, okay, sir, I certainly can, but may I ask why? And he says, well, we already know what it is. And I said, okay, sir, so it's ours? And he said, no. That's not what I'm saying. He asked me point blank, have you read your Bible lately? And I wasn't quite sure where he was going with that. And I said, well, sir, I think I know what it says. Where are you going with this? And he said, well, then you would know that these things are demonic and we should not be pursuing them.
And what I've been trying to do is to use the special privilege that I've been given of getting access to a Harvard education and the law school education and with the Jesuits and all the different people and meeting, Baba Muktananda and getting to meet all the spiritual leaders of our people and our planet, is to try to develop a really intelligent, sophisticated, spiritually informed, but rationally developed set of policies for our dealing with extraterrestrial civilizations.
The showings of the angels or the showings of God always showed up as orbs of light or things like that. And today we see this as, we call them UFOs. So maybe, again, the things that we have peopled our religions with in the form of spirits or gods or what have you, are really just these things showing themselves as they appear to be now. Religions have made conclusions about the data and have become set in their ways. And that is frankly what sets up this potential conflict amongst the religions, because they've all come to a conclusion and they're trying to prove the other one wrong.
Yeah. A pillar of fire at night and confused Russian troops. It has some asking, are Ukrainians receiving heavenly help?
There's some miracle happen. It looked like some spaceship, like there was like an attack from the spaceship. There was some kind of a lightnings was starting shooting from the sky, and like sparks were like spreading everywhere. And then on the morning they've discovered that the whole machinery was destroyed.
Revelation 16 says these unclean spirits, they go and they perform signs and wonders. And Jesus warns in the Gospel of Luke, and it's repeated in the book of Acts, chapter 2, that there will be signs in the heavens. And a lot of people are going to be seeing things in the skies in the last days. The Bible says that in prophecy. So we need to know what the truth is, what to believe and what not to believe, because I think that evil spirits are going to use that to manipulate people in the last days.
We're now less than 16 minutes away.
The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens, and all of it, he said, is a lie.
No, I'm not talking to you about this. What am I going to tell her or him? These little kids, 10, 11 years old. Yeah, that there's a force that exists out there that can control our environment, that can put thoughts in your head, that can lie to you, trick you, deceive you. Say that to a 12-year-old. I mean, we're already saying it to a certain extent.
14 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
If you're an alien and you want to get baptized, the Pope is in favor of it.
Pope Francis reiterated his view Monday that everyone has the right to be baptized, and apparently that invite extends even to Martians.
There were no questions that prepared me for what I was about to get into. People often say, "Oh, it must have been fun and must have been exciting." No, it was pretty sobering. I liken this conversation to like having a conversation with a loved one about maybe cancer. Now, the good news is the diagnosis looks fine, you're going to recover, but it's a serious conversation. This is something that we are challenging people to reevaluate their philosophical, psychological, sociological, and theological belief system. Anytime you ask humanity to do something like that, it usually takes generations. You can't just pivot. Because, for example, let's just take culture, for example, of a country. It's like an aircraft carrier. How long does it take to turn an aircraft carrier? Well, it takes quite a bit of time and a lot of effort and whatnot. Well, this topic is the same way, because we're challenging people to reconsider, if you will, reevaluate their understanding of what they've been told about the universe and more importantly, our place in it.
What do you think that was? Just a hallucination or a...
To be perfectly honest, a demon.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of ghosts, anything of that kind of sort.
You don't believe in
aliens.
ghosts?
I don't. I was in the kitchen by myself and I felt it come up next to me and I said out loud, I said, God, whatever this is that's been posing as grandma for the past 7 years, in Jesus' name, get it away from me and never let it come back. And it hasn't been back since.
These so-called alien beings are actually manifesting at times as dead relatives during the abduction experience to challenge a person's belief system as Christian theology in the idea that dead relatives can be talked to or even spoken to, or that they're even around to be able to hear what we have to say.
No evolutionary or religious belief system shows that this will end well by contacting these things. Evolution, it says that these things are likely to be superior, and so survival of the fittest will destroy us. Religion says that these things are deceptive and dangerous, and the evidence, if you want to include all the theory and all this, the stories that of these sincere people, it says they've damaged crops, they have mutilated cattle, they've abducted people beyond their will, they've messed with our highest security protocols, they enabled and disabled dangerous warheads, forced pregnancies, forced surgeries, burned victims, killed pilots, and lied to people. And most experiencers have experienced at least one terrifying alien experience. So to say that these things, they haven't destroyed us yet, so they must be good, is to deny the fact that there might be a universe, a court, saying these earthlings are protected here on Earth. And that's what Christianity believes.
We've passed the 11-minute mark. Now T-minus 10 minutes, 54 seconds on our countdown.
Both of us, separately, without communicating, we're studying this and going, wow, there is something going on here.
Right.
Since this is out, it's in Congress, and they're discussing this right now. This isn't conspiracy anymore.
Sure. Yeah,
Something
absolutely.
weird's going on here.
Absolutely. Very eye-opening.
The Defense Intelligence Agency has just released that program's 2010 report on UFOs. And among other things, the document tells us that the government can prove that UFO sightings have caused radiation burns, paralysis, and brain damage. The report also says that some people who saw UFOs experienced, quote, perceived time suspension. They also saw ghosts and other spirits. In all, that report lists 42 cases of adverse effects from medical files and another 300 adverse effects from unpublished cases, whatever that means.
Mark, T-minus 10 minutes and counting, T-minus 10.
But what they're saying to us now is it's going to affect Christian belief. There is a professor for the Pope's University in Rome, and he is a very highly respected intellectual. His last name is Tanzaniti, and he has written a paper now in which he is saying that very soon, not right in the beginning, we won't have to deny our Christian faith in the beginning, but there is information coming from another world, and once it is confirmed, it is going to require a rereading of the gospel as we know it. And that's the kind of information that we are receiving from the highest levels of Vatican intelligentsia.
If you really hear what I'm saying about the nuclear weapons, the UFOs were turning our weapons on, and just so Russia could pick up that we're firing our missiles and fire theirs first. It was a big chess game. So these guys went into complete secrecy to start coming up with a defense system against this phenomenon.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is.
There are things flying around up there that we haven't fully identified yet. And keep in mind, there are basically 1 billion galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. I mean, you can't even get your mind around the sheer number of things that are out there.
But you've seen this.
And
you've seen the data.
Well, no one knows, but I think that the probability is that there's something you would call life somewhere else.
The mission of ATIP was quite simple. It was to collect and analyze information involving anomalous aerial vehicles. What I guess in the vernacular you call them UFOs. We call them UAPs.
You know how this sounds. It sounds nutty, wacky.
Look, Bill, I'm not telling you that it doesn't sound wacky. What I'm telling you is real. The question is, what is it? What are its intentions? What are its capabilities?
My name's Tom DeLong. Most people know me as the founder of the popular rock and roll band called Blink-182. I started a company called To the Stars that eventually became To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. We are literally the group that is responsible for why you read about UFOs in the papers today without all the stigma. It's the first time that we had the videos properly declassified. And because of that, then we had information as far as altitude and speed, eyes on target, different radar systems, different sensors that all corroborated what was happening. When people start to understand more about the UFO phenomenon, and when they follow what Secret Machines is going to teach them, and mind you, as we'll talk about this in a little bit, it's not all coming from me, it's coming from other people of the highest places. The term the occult in that whole world is much more a part of the UFO phenomenon than, and that's part of what makes it more complex than just little green men and flying saucers and tinfoil hats. There's a very, very strong link between what people think demons are from the Bible and other religions and the UFO phenomenon. And what you have is something that doesn't like man, period, and something that feels either jealous of or has some kind of plan for what man is to be.
Over the next 10 years, I have now worked with over 400 cases of people that have been able to stop the abduction experience in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. This is documented evidence.
But what they're saying to us now is it's going to affect Christian belief. Very soon, not right in the beginning, we won't have to deny our Christian faith in the beginning. But there is information coming from another world, and once it is confirmed, it is going to require a rereading of the gospel as we know it. And that's the kind of information that we are receiving from the highest levels of Vatican intelligentsia.
We're now passing the 4-minute 30-second mark in the countdown. Still go at this time.
And the priest told us, could I have a little bit more of your time? I want to do something very fascinating. He says the grain plane, the master's grain plane, for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grain plane, he says, is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because he says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it.
All right, get ready for another show. Hit that like button. Really would appreciate it. And let me know where you are from in the chat. We are broadcasting from the foothills of Chattanooga. Looking forward to seeing y'all.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting. T-minus 3. We are go with all elements of the mission at this time. Just past the 2-minute mark in the countdown. T-minus 1 minute, 54 seconds and counting. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we are go. Guidance system goes on internal at 17 seconds, leading up to the ignition sequence at 8.9 seconds. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60.
Mysteries to the universe we were never meant to solve. But who we are and why we are here are not among them.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Strange Normal. My name is Brad Burnham. We talk about the stranger things that happen in your normal life to give you a biblical understanding of what's going on. And boy, have we had a lot going on these last couple weeks. And I appreciate all you guys that have been here tonight. And it looks like we have quite a crowd coming. Boy, I'm stuttering all over the place tonight. But we are going to be talking about Daniel Gruch and this incredible thing that's happened to the Pentagon just recently, or from the Pentagon. Mussolini is talked about. Daniel Sheehan, a lawyer that believes in that believes there are aliens. We're going to talk about the 100-year disclosure that apparently they've talked about and reveal exactly what's going on behind this. Also, Angel, his name is Angel, from Vegas, is back in the news again. We're going to talk a little bit about him and what's going on there. Russell Brand, if you know who that is, podcaster. He's absolutely sure this will change the Bible, and maybe if we get to it, we're going to watch a story from Greer's new disclosure project, because it was quite an amazing story, and we need to be informed on what's going on here. Lots happening tonight, and so I want to give you a quick update on what's happening there before I reveal our guest tonight. Matthew, welcome. You've been here before.
Yeah, I found myself here a time or two. Yeah. It's always good to be back.
It's going to be good tonight. There's lots going on, and lots of people in the chat tonight, so I'm excited. We have our first. You know what? Let's just jump right into it. I thought it would be good to cover the 1933 crash. And man, I stutter even saying that, to be honest, Matthew, because I'm still amazed and I'm still questioning this whole physical thing that's happening, because I truly believe that if there is a physical manifestation of these things, and just we know that this can happen, like you've said earlier, and I've said on the show, there are physical deceptions in the Bible, and these deceptions are found in I was going to let you do that part. That's okay.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, Brad and I have we've chatted about this a little bit off air, and I scoured the Bible trying to find where there were some physical manifestations of demonic trickery, and I think the closest I could get to something comparable to a physical craft would be when Pharaoh's magicians, they copied the miracles that God was showing, and that most famously, I believe, is when they turned their rods into snakes. So I take the Bible at its word. When it says that their rods became snakes through their enchantment, that's what happened. I don't think it was a sleight of hand type of a thing where they got some
rubber
snakes
snake
in a box. Exactly, yeah. Or they, puffed some smoke and then all of a sudden, oh, snakes. It also says that they were able to turn water from the Nile into blood. That was an interesting thing. So I don't think that's just a red dyed water. I think it was actually blood. And then I believe the other one that they were able to copy was the frogs. The third one they were able to do as well. But then I believe once it hit the fourth one, which ironically, those were the plagues that only fell on Egypt. And they were not, they didn't affect God's people. The first three plagues affected everybody, but the last 7 plagues affected only the Egyptians. And those plagues, it said there, they could not replicate them with their enchantments. So if we're going to go off of the Bible and look at where a physical trickery has taken place, I'd look to Exodus and see those miracles that were replicated.
That was fantastic.
But I want to invite our audience too. If you know of anything that could support this, please do send it our way, because it is a real head scratcher that if they have physical craft, how can that be? And most importantly, where is the biblical precedent for it?
Right. And this is why I believe Russell, we're going to get to Russell, and Russell Brand is like, well, this is going to rewrite the Bible if we find these things. And this is what people actually believe. They believe that it's completely going to do away with religion. And we are here, we're doing this channel because I can't find another channel that's really trying to do this full throttle like we are, and I want to make sure that this gets out and far. So that's what we're doing. So that's on the table tonight. But you know what? Without further ado, Matthew, I think we're going to jump right into it. Let's review what Daniel Grouch has said about this. Is it Grush?
Grush. Yeah, I've heard it Grush. It's like brush, but with a grr. Grush.
I've heard.
Actually, I think there's a kid's. Sorry, I think there's a kid's toothbrush called the Grush. Actually,
I've heard so many news people talking about this, and as I reviewed, I think I got every name of the book in my head because they all say it different. So, Grush is what I'll say from now on. So here we go. This is what he says about it, and we're also going to get into Roswell a little bit. So here we go. This is going to be a crazy night.
Grush says shortly after the dawn of the atomic age, another major crash recovery took place. You've probably heard of it.
What can you tell me about the Roswell craft? Fortunately, those details were not approved for me to talk about right now.
This much we know. In 1947, an object crashed in the New Mexico desert near the town of Roswell. The Air Force recovered material described as metallic and rubbery, though the government changed its story as to what it was, calling it a flying disc at first, then a weather or spy balloon.
It just read ridiculous to me that the US Air Force had changed its story.
Yeah, and they added additional elements over time and tried to conflate additional programs to explain some of the events.
Why are these things crashing?
Yeah, some are landed, some are crashed, and I think that's an interesting discussion that's come up, as advanced as, we are, as humans, right? Planes crash, cars crash. Just because you're some advanced sentience that has advanced technology doesn't mean some small percentage of your, I'll use the Air Force term like sorties, meet an unfortunate operational conclusion, as we might want to say.
Most people would tell you the Roswell incident has been thoroughly debunked. In fact, the Air Force published this report in 1994 to put the issue to rest once and for all. Grush has read it.
That analysis they did was a total hack job, and even anybody with analytical skills, if you read it, you can deduce that they're conflating multiple situations with crash test dummies and mogul balloons, and they're just saying that the townsfolk who personally witnessed it were totally imagining things. They concocted that whole report just to disinform.
So the reason for the secrecy exactly is what?
Feudalistic dominance, who can have both asymmetric technology for, it seems like, just fueling the war machine.
Grush says that through the 50s and 60s, encounters with the NHI continued, as did the cover-up. One incident in 1967, about which multiple Air Force veterans have gone public, involved UAPs tampering with the nuclear missiles at Malmstrom Air Base in Montana.
They saw a craft, appearing to be intelligently controlled, hovered over a nuclear weapons silo and shut down 10 nuclear ICBM missiles.
Mm-hmm. It certainly looks like they want to understand how far we've advanced in our nuclear fizzle kind of technologies at the very least. I mean, it looks like preparatory probing activity. It might be innocent kind of scientific gathering, could be ISR probing.
Meanwhile, Grush says the crash retrieval program continued. And while he won't reveal where the downed craft are stored, he does say that the people working with the technology have been putting themselves at risk.
A lot of them, were injured looking at some of this stuff. You can imagine the nuclear, radiological, and biological risk to looking at an unknown. And a lot of them have literally suffered physically because of their service.
So let's talk about that just for a second. I want to pause it there before we get into the actual part about Italy and the 1933 one, which we're going to cover it in extent, much more detail tonight. He said that, number one, talking about Roswell, it's still just unbelievable for me to be talking about this, because as I drove from California, when I moved from California to Tennessee, Matthew, I went and purposefully drove through Roswell just to see, okay, what's all the hubbub about? Surely there's something going on here that's interesting. And aside from the street lights looking like alien heads and a museum dedicated to alien stuff, which had a lot of interesting news articles and stuff in it, there wasn't much else there. I mean, yeah, the McDonald's looks like a UFO, but I mean, it's
Really?
obviously, yeah, it's all kinds of stuff going on. But yeah, there wasn't anything besides that. There was a couple mom and pop shops that sold memorabilia and stuff, but I thought there would be something like that I could go and say this was the spot, or something like that. I couldn't really find anything. I'm sure there is, but I didn't have much time either. So it's just kind of fascinating to me to realize that could this really be a physical deception? And so I still stutter and say, well, maybe let's look into this. Let's cover all bases and just check it. Obviously, this is the Strange Normal Research Group, so let's research it according and through the lens of the Bible and see what's actually going on here. Another thing they said was some landed and some crashed. That's what he said. The Pentagon said some have landed, some have crashed, and I've heard other people have said that were like Lou Elizondo. I forget the exact name of the person that was talking about this stuff. But again, if the lore is true, which this guy is coming out and saying this stuff, either he's completely disinformation or he's really telling you about the deception. Some have been given to us by fallen angels as a gift, and we're going to go into that in a little more detail, and some have crashed, pretending to be losing control. And I remember there was a Pentagon guy that said, what if this is true and so many of these things are so advanced, why are they crashing so much?
Yeah. I think everybody's had that question at least once when they're looking at this. Doesn't make sense. Yeah, I doubt that they're all just coming here to party and it's the level of incidents on Earth is off the chart. The Galactic Federation is really trying to crack down on Earth airspace. But no, I think the whole idea of them landing too, what does that look like then? You got like two of them and they're like, here's the keys, toss it to take her for a spin, Earthling.
You can handle it. Yeah.
I do think that the technology definitely could be given by fallen angels, because when you think about Satan, he wants to be like God, but he is in no way anywhere near as powerful as God. He's not omnipresent. He's not omnipotent. And I bet that bugs him a lot. So when you see something like this massive surveillance state, for example, that's being put into place, I always feel that it comes from a satanic root, because Satan wants that power of God. God has access to your innermost thoughts. He can see everything you've done. He could bring any moment of your life into judgment because he has that perfect record of it. And I think Satan covets that as well. So I think some of the surveillance technology that's being brought about, that has been brought about even, could have been spurred on by demons to serve that larger purpose.
Yeah.
And if that's stuff that's out in the public, then I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Realistically,
right.
None of us do.
And this stuff is essentially, since it's in the hands of the government and the Defense Department specifically, I mean, after all, the White House press conference lady said that the Defense Department's going to have to answer this question. And so it's the Defense Department it's in the hands of. And what does the Defense Department like to do? Create war. It loves war. And so what does Satan love? War. So if it's in their hands, obviously it's going to be created for technology of war and maintaining dominance over other countries, which is not the character that I think that should be represented. But let's go into this a little bit further, because after that he talks a little bit about Roswell, which we'll come back to here in a little while. But I want to dig into Let me bring it up here to make sure that I have the right clip on hand. I want to dig into that part of Italy. That was what's really fascinating to me, because I thought the first one, if the lore was correct, you always have this in the back of your head. Okay, where's the timeline? Well, the timeline is back in 1933, apparently, according to the Pentagon dude, according to David.
1933, eh?
1933.
That's an interesting year.
33. Where have we heard that before? Interesting. Just interesting. Okay, so let's look at the 1933 one, just so we're familiar with, again, the history of what we already know from this News Nation broadcast.
Grush says shortly after the dawn of the atomic age, another major crash recovery took place. You've probably heard of it.
What can you tell me about the Roswell craft?
Pause it for a second. This is the one we've already seen, isn't it? I'm trying to find the exact clip of the one before that. Let me bring it up here to be sure I understand.
Got me all excited. I had my shovel in hand. I had my hard hat. Just ready to do some digging, man.
I thought I played it.
We turned this ground over.
I know. I don't know what's going on here. I thought I had it already. All right, let's play this one.
So let's start from the very beginning. You say it's a 90-year cover-up.
Just about, yeah.
90 years.
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's long been known that the regime of dictator Benito Mussolini documented numerous UAP during this time. This internal memo from the Italian secret services includes crude drawings of the UAPs.
It's true. It's real.
Yeah, that actually happened. Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945. And, the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved?
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet?
Certainly.
We're going to dig into this tonight. This is where this is going. And so the Vatican knows about this. Well, no wonder the Vatican's on the news saying, we'll baptize an alien. Yeah, we'll baptize. I mean, think about this. This gives a little more legitimacy to the physical nature of this deception. If the Vatican was already on the news talking about aliens, and we're like, where did that come from? Well, maybe it did come from some archive somewhere because they saw a crash, saw something they didn't understand. And what if, instead of little green men, the deception created by these evil angels made it look like the angels from the Bible were flying these things? Just think about that for a second as we watch this next clip. Because the deception, I think, is going to get real thick real fast. There was another podcast, I forget its name, but you'll see these guys up here. They've got name tags if you're interested in going here and digging further. But they're going to read some of the scavenged archives from this crash just so we can get an idea of what happened in this 1930s. Because there's so much about Roswell, but we don't know much about this 1933 one. So check this out. We're just going to listen to this real quick.
So on the morning of June 13th, 1933, an unidentified flying object appeared in the clouds covering the skies of Lombardy. Can I just caveat, this is translated from Italian, so the wording might be a little bit out. The aircraft landed shortly after, possibly crashing near the municipality of Vergiate in the province of Varese. The security organs immediately activated. The remains of the mysterious aircraft were hurriedly transported to a nearby SIAI Marchetti plant, and the bodies of two deceased pilots, tall, blonde, with blue eyes, which everyone, associates that with the Nordic beings. But, this is all I could really find about the pilots across all of the documentation. It's 1.8 meters, two of them tall, fair hair, and the eyes. That's it. That's all I could find. Apparently preserved in formalin, but I think it means formaldehyde. Benito Mussolini, informed of the facts, was at first convinced that it was a foreign prototype, and I think he believed it was French or German. Unauthorized flight over Italian skies, and ordered that the incident kept in the strictest secrecy. In the days following the event, the mystery became more intense. The mysterious aircraft had not yet been identified and could have been of extraterrestrial origin.
Okay, so we know so far that they found something, and they don't know what it is, but the apparently bodies inside. I mean, I'm partial to the puppet theory. This is what I'm calling it. Maybe I'm coining this phrase right now, but I'm partial to the puppet theory. Yeah, because we know that Satan can't create life, and if this is definitely, and I believe it is definitely a satanic agenda to convince everyone of this idea that they've come from far distant galaxies to Earth to convince us that we have to do something important, or else reap the repercussions of disaster. And that's what Roger Morneau has said. If that's true, well, we're seeing these bodies are basically puppets, which they can puppet to appear to be alive as long as their puppeteer is willing to stick around. And I think that's probably what we're seeing when we see bodies, because they're not angels.
So something interesting I just thought of was Christ had cast out some demons. I believe it wasn't Legion, the Legion incident, but it was two men who were in a similar situation as Legion. If I'm remembering correctly, forgive me if I'm not, but they asked to be driven out into the swine, and then the swine went off over the cliff. And there's been some really weird stuff. We haven't touched on it on this show. I don't think we've had an opportunity to, but there are things called chimeras, and basically that is human DNA spliced with usually pig DNA, ironically. And a lot of people get into the ethics about this type of a thing, and people think it's very unethical. Anytime there's some type of an article or a news story about it, it gets shut down by the common person because it's like it's a disgusting, weird thing that you're doing, and it's like, do we give these things rights? What level of intelligence would they have? All sorts of questions. I know those were experiments just being done by universities. So whenever we talk about this type of stuff, these are some of the darkest parts of the United States military-industrial complex. These guys have budgets that allow them to do whatever they want, and they call them SAPs, which is a special access project. So that means that if you're not on the list, you don't get to know that it even exists.
Wait, you were in the military, right?
Yeah, I was in the military.
How do you know all this? Are you a SAP?
No, I wasn't on any special access programs. I had a secret clearance. My name was on the door of certain spaces where there was a list of people, and it said these people can have access to it. It's like a list of 15 people, and like the captain, the XO, command master, chief, and those in my division could get in there. But that's part of what I'm saying. The military is compartmentalized. You don't necessarily, just because if you're a cook on board a ship, you're not really going to see much of the ship. If you're a boatswain's mate, you're just probably going to be up top busting rust off of the deck. If you have more of a security clearance, you get more access to stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean I gain access to what another division has. And I guess that's what I'm trying to stress here, is that we hear these really strange things about the military and what they could be up to, but to me, all of it is plausible. And some of it's plausible to the point where I would say maybe even probable, because they can just run wild in these dark corners, and they're not held accountable to anybody the way that they should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and
I was just thinking about your puppets, by the way, and that's why I brought it up. These puppets that you're describing could potentially be some type of weird spliced organic matter. Right. It's a theory, people, by the way. This is a theory. We're a
reaching
speculative
here.
Theory episode. None of this should be taken as gospel truth. Sometimes we're just as lost as you are, and all we can do is look at the pieces and wonder how they fit together.
Well, it's interesting too, because haven't we seen a lot of, and this is all part of the lore, haven't we seen a lot of cow mutilations out of this whole thing? So what if they're taking organic material and splicing in and making and molding flesh to make these puppets? Oh boy, boy.
I think there'd be an easier way to get. I think there'd be an easier way to get your hands on some cow organs, but.
Oh man, I don't know.
I don't know. The cattle mutilation is another very weird part of the puzzle because it's out there. I mean,
maybe I'm getting too far.
Though. Maybe
let's move on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I like it.
If you're liking,
have to go there.
We go here a lot further, probably in the Discord. So if that's what you're into, join us in the Discord. We won't go too far. We'll stick to the script here tonight and try to continue down the road of sanity. But if you are interested in this stuff, join our Discord, which is the Strange Normal Research Group. You can access that by going to patreon.com/strangenormal. You'll see it rotate in the thing down at the bottom here. Okay, so let's go down to the next clip here as they continue talking about this and finding out what happened in 1933.
Goes on here. Mussolini authorized the investigations to be conducted by the RS-33 Cabinet of the OVRA, the Opera Vigilanza Repressione Antifascismo, the secret police of fascist Italy. The files relating to the research conducted by the RS-33 Cabinet, coordinated by Marconi, would later be accessible to the authorities of Nazi Germany as well. Based on those documents, the development of the Wunderwaffen, which I guess is the wonder weapons of Germany, began. Experimental secret weapons, including the V7, the aircraft very similar to a flying saucer, and Die Glocke, a bell-shaped armored device that moved suspended in the air. So, according to this narrative, the political history of ufology, contacts with aliens kept hidden from the population by a precise government, would begin with the discovery of Verge 8. 14 years before the flying saucer crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. The RS-33 Cabinet, some speculate the RS is the acronym for Special Research, would have operated in the buildings of La Sapienza University of Rome and liaised with the leading figures of the regime. The Cabinet, whose meetings were attended by senators and scientists, was the fascist version of Majestic 12, the secret US organization that was allegedly formed in 1947 to investigate Roswell.
Okay, so not a lot of information I think we can dig out of that, but it's just a little bit of backstory. Mussolini was involved. They call it RS-33. Fascinatingly enough, that's the name for this thing, RS-33. I forget what that RS stands for, like Special Project in French. I don't know. I don't know.
It would be Italian.
Italian, Brad. Yeah, okay. Thanks. And
people in Italy speak Italian.
I know that. And so it's going to be fascinating to try to dig a little bit further. But I want to tie this into the Daniel Sheehan story. Actually, you figured this out earlier on this channel. We did I think it was an episode with me and Mikey, and we talked about this story where Daniel Sheehan went. And if you don't know who Daniel Sheehan is, he's a very, very prominent, I guess you can call him a ufologist, who went to Harvard. He's a lawyer now. He was a Jesuit priest or about to become one. And so he decided he was going to go find out if there's anything in the Vatican archives about UFOs because he's curious about that. And because who wakes up on a Sunday morning and says, I wonder what the Vatican knows about UFOs?
I'm just going to take a little trip into the Vatican archives. Yeah. You try that, people at home. See how far you get.
That was anyway, it's another show on this episode, another show I think about a year ago. I think we showed that, but I dug it out of the archives because I want to show this clip again. And so let's watch a little bit about that. This is kind of a longer clip, but it's going to give all of our viewers, especially new viewers, a little bit of backstory. Before I go into that little cliffhanger here, I do want to tell, and I think you're going to be surprised, Matthew. I'm going to tell everybody this because I think it'd be a neat thing to draw people to. On a Sunday, sometime in the future, we're going to do a meetup, and it's going to be at the Ark Encounter in, where is that? Kentucky? Kentucky.
It's in Kentucky.
And if you're interested in that, we're going to have details in our Discord. And so if that's fascinating to you, leave us a comment or join us in the Discord. That's all I'm going to say about that. More details later. Let's get into the program and this Daniel Sheehan story. Here we go.
Goes on here. Mussolini authorized the investigations to be conducted by the RS-33 Cabinet of the OVRA, the Opera Vigilanza Repression Antifascismo.
Well, let's talk about how you ended up in the Vatican libraries. Let's talk about, I remember you showing the drawing that you sneaked your little, yellow pad into your pants and came out with a sketch, a tracing of these symbols. Let's talk about how the Vatican became involved.
Well, what it was is that I contacted the Vatican and again asked them if I could get access to this in their classified. And what happened is that's what generated the Air Force authorizing me to go in to see the classified portions of Blue Book. This was actually in the files of the Blue Book. That's where I saw this. Is that they actually brought the files to Washington, D.C., and they brought them to the Jefferson Building, which was a brand new building for the Congressional, the Library of Congress. There wasn't anybody in those offices yet. And I went over there on a Saturday morning, had to show them 3 different forms of photo ID to get in. There were these 2 suits at the door, and so I went in, and they said, you have to walk down this hall. And so I walked down the hall, echoing in this hall with nobody in the whole building, brand new building, and get in this elevator, and I go down to the basement, and I get out of the elevator, and I can see this light on down in this office down there. So I go down, and there's 2 other suits there who recheck my ID, and it just occurred to me when I was coming down in the elevator, I opened up my briefcase and took out a yellow pad and put it under my arm. And so when I went down to the basement floor and met with these guys, they took my briefcase and said, look, you can't take any notes or anything on anything you see in there. And so I walked in, and what there was this room about maybe 18, 20 feet wide, about 10 feet deep, and they had these big folding tables. You think it's going to be something really sophisticated, right? They had these folding tables, and they had these boxes, these little shoebox size things. They were this kind of light green, kind of institutional green boxes, and they were filled with microfiche. And I took the microfiche out and brought them to one of these very unsophisticated tin kind of microfiche crank machines, and I started looking through them all. And I said, I'm never going to have time to read all these documents of what's in here, but I was looking for pictures. And so I found this set of pictures that showed an absolutely uncontestable UFO that had landed, had hit in this field, and it had plowed this big furrow across the field and was stuck in the side of a bank, and it was all snow there. So this wasn't Roswell.
Right.
So here's this UFO sticking at like a 45-degree angle up out of this big snowbank, and there are U.S. Air Force people all around it. They had these big parkas on, and I recognized what they were, and they were taking film of it. So this dated it somewhat. It was a film camera with those 2 big rolls on the top of the camera, so like it's in the 50s or something. And so I'm looking through these pictures, these different pictures of it, and suddenly I realized that at the bottom of the dome of this UFO, I could see these symbols. And so what I did is I took out the yellow pad and I opened it up to the back cardboard cover on the inside, and I put it under the microfiche, and I shrunk the microfiche to fit right onto the page, and then I traced the symbols exactly. This is what they were. And I folded it back up, and I put the microfiche back in, and I said, I'd better get out of here because I've now got this. So I put the yellow pad under my arm, and I go back out, and I walk out. And these 2 suits that were out there were kind of surprised that I'd come out of there. And so I'm walking away, and I pick up my briefcase, and I walk away, and I get about 15, 20 steps away from them, and one of them says, hold it, what have you got there? And I said, oh, it's my briefcase. I just picked my briefcase back up. And he said, no, what's that under your arm? And he walked over to me, and he snatches the yellow pad away like this, and he ruffles all the way through all the pages of it, and there was nothing on
there.
it. So he hands it back to me.
Because it was on the cardboard.
And so I go back the following Monday morning to Jesuit headquarters, right there in Washington. And I go in to see Father William Davis, who was my immediate superior at the Jesuits. And I show him this, and I tell him what I found. And he reaches down, and he slides out the bottom drawer of his desk, and he takes out a little manila envelope, and he slides out of it an 8.5 by 11 black and white glossy photograph of a UFO. And he hands it to me, and he said, my sister sent this to me, Dodie sent this to me. Her husband, whom I had met, was an air traffic controller in the Seattle airport. And his best friend is a commercial pilot who took this photograph right out of the window of his plane, and he didn't dare report it to anybody because of all this ridicule effect.
Right.
So he brings it to his best friend, who is the air traffic controller, saying, there, now I've done what I'm supposed to do. He brings it home and didn't know what to do with it, gives it to his sister Dodie and says, give this to your brother. He's a priest.
Okay.
And so he had it in his drawer. You say, what does that mean? What does that mean? People think like that. Why is this something that they should tell a priest about? And there I was at Jesuit headquarters in the process of becoming a priest, a Jesuit priest, and in here I'm getting all this information. And yet the Vatican won't show it to us, won't tell us. Even a Jesuit who's the head of the Vatican Library won't show this to us. So I went to the National Council of Churches in WISC and asked them to set up a task force, and they wouldn't do it.
Okay, he's just going on and on and on and on. But I think some of the interesting points out of that is, at first I was like, okay, he said 1950s, but he doesn't really know what the date was. He just says it's a picture. I don't know when it's from. And then he says that they had a video camera with big reels on it. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to match the story, since it's fascinating that it was, you mentioned this, it was snowy, right? Mm-hmm. Alps. Yes. Is this the same 1933?
Yes, let's set it up, because so as you saw in the previous clips, those guys were talking about, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Vergiate, I think, and it's near Magenta, which Magenta and Vergiate, they're like within 25 miles of each other. So it checks out. Grush is saying Magenta, those other guys are reading from the report that, it's a little town 25 miles away. Either way, it's up in the Alps. When I had first seen that broadcast about a year ago, I was thinking, okay, snow, and he mentioned like U.S. Air Force, I think, patches. But at the same time, like you're saying, the guy doesn't know necessarily off of a photo. I mean, what was it? The patch like right here? Was it half of the half of the pictures? The patch, yeah, exactly. And the other. But I was thinking, okay, maybe Canada, maybe Russia. Your mind goes to these places that are snowy. But it's funny because the Alps, the snow-covered Alps, are pretty much always snowy. So if there was a UFO crash there would be snow. And it just seems odd that the Vatican has this particular incident in their archives. And we heard from Grush that they handed over the UFO to the United States. So they had gained possession of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But,
approved by Mussolini.
I just wanted to. Yes. Just setting that up for everybody. It's all these things seem to correlate with one another. And as I said, this is a speculative episode. We're trying to connect dots, but it seems likely that if this guy is telling the truth, the photograph, and the microfiche that he saw is of this incident in 1933.
Which would make it probable that this is a little more evidence behind this. I think that's and also fascinating. I wrote down that people came to their priest to give them UFO images, like the priest is going to be able to do anything about that. Hey, look, UFO, he'll do something about it. Well, maybe they were thinking, I don't know, hey, demonic things are happening. Sheehan was going to become a Jesuit priest, so I think that's fascinating too. The Jesuits are something very, very interesting group of people. They are the militant group of the Catholic Church, and they kind of are very well versed in what's going on. Let's just put it that way. He says a little bit more about this, so let's learn what he says about the 100-year disclosure. Just interesting. So watch this, and this time I'm actually gonna go to the next clip. There we go.
Wait a second. Don't you realize that there is a disclosure project going on? It's just taking an entire
perpetual.
generation.
Yes.
That they're going to take the entire generation from 1947 with the Roswell encounter all the way through. And they're going to have an entire generation. They're planning like a 100-year rollout of more and more information to the point where this generation passes from the scene. But the new generation that's coming in behind us are completely acclimated to this.
Right.
Because you take the millennial generation that are basically 33, down to about 20, about 15 right now. That millennial generation, you poll them, and 95% of them will tell you that it's absolutely clear that there's extraterrestrial intelligence.
Right.
Not only that, but it's very likely that these UFOs and ET contacts are happening.
Right.
And so that this second answer to the question is there's already a rollout that's going on here, okay? And but they're going to go this other route of doing it kind of formally.
Interesting. That happened a long time ago. He mentioned that. And this is all way before this whole stuff has happened with the Pentagon right now. So, this guy knows something.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't trust a Jesuit at all. But some of the stuff he's putting out here seems to be credible. At least it fits the narrative that's being pushed right now. Mm-hmm. So that does show that this has been planned. This has been in the works for a while. And I think ultimately that's Satan's aim. He knows his time is short. He's not going to waste any resources. He's making moves. He's making them purposefully, and he wants to get as many people into the deception as possible. Mm-hmm. It's you're right that people are bringing this UFO stuff to priests and I'm sure other religious authorities because it crosses over into the realm of the supernatural, and people want to know what's going on because it's out of the normal. Even if I think the majority of people have this mindset, they want to approach it as this is a scientific phenomenon, but even David Grush talked about it. They don't call them aliens. He started up a new term, non-human intelligence, NHIs. Mm-hmm. And you hear that. And I bet we're going to hear that more and more, the same way that UFO became UAP, because there's a difference there. There's a subtle difference. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. This is no longer an unidentified flying object necessarily. It's a phenomenon. And then they're not necessarily aliens. They're just non-human intelligences. And he even implies pretty directly in the interview that they could be from another dimension, not necessarily from another world. Which, I don't know, depending on how you theologically look at things, heaven, fallen angels are from heaven. They had to fall from somewhere, and they fell from heaven. Heaven is... if it's a place without time, if it's the eternal dwelling place of the heavenly host, then I have to imagine to our very minor understanding, it's like another dimension, essentially.
I don't know. I think it's a very physical place. 'Cause, I mean, even it has time. The Bible mentions in the Bible. It mentions in the Bible that there will be. From one new moon to the next, one Sabbath to the next, it's in Isaiah that we will serve God. And it also mentions there will be no day, night. I mean, I see your point there, but I think what's really gives an interesting push for a time and physical place would be the fact that it says we're going to spend 1,000 years there, and towards the end of Revelation, it says that. And so if that's the case, we definitely have a time span and that we're living in while we're there in heaven. And so I think even Jesus right now, he's still in his human body. He's, went to heaven.
Yeah,
and
I believe that.
And so I think there's something to that. And so we're going to get a glorified body, but we're still going to be, the laws of physics are still going to, be a part of our life. And I think it's going to be a perfect physics, though. Something that hasn't been damaged as this earth has.
Right. And that's important. The language we use it's inferior. It's incapable of talking about these heavenly concepts. It's funny when Jesus, how do I talk about the kingdom of heaven, I'm going to have to talk about like this seed. I can't really tell you what it is. I'm going to have to compare it to something. And even then, it doesn't match the glory. It just gives us a hint. It gives us an idea of the concept. And that's, I guess, what I'm getting at with now the people are starting to come forward and saying, not necessarily another galaxy, another dimension. That's the spiritual realm. We know that there's a spiritual realm. There's, depending on where you are, there could be evil entities hovering around. There's holy entities as well, keeping them at bay. There's all of this action happening around us that we're blind to and we can't see. And I suppose that's what I'm getting at. Wherever you believe heaven is, there is some type of, and this is using the imperfect language, a dimension outside of our perception. And that is where they're claiming to come from. I mean, that's it's pretty in line with the truth as to what's going on. I think they get so close. Charles Spurgeon, he said that discernment isn't knowing the difference between right and wrong. It's knowing the difference between right and almost right. So I think they'll stick as close to the truth as possible, but then they'll deviate just ever so slightly. And that's where we say, no, thus saith the Lord. And we hold that Bible out.
Absolutely. Fascinating. Oh, we got one more clip from this Sheehan guy, I think. And it's about a 3-minute clip. And then we're going to run into Angel from Vegas. His literal name is Angel, the guy who saw something. So here we go.
They're willing to listen.
That's right.
Do you think, and this is the big question I think everybody in this particular area of study is asked, do you think that the incredible caution has been justified, that the public at large really isn't capable of handling this if it were something to happen very quickly?
No. Again, I think there are two answers to this. That it's not because of the public.
What are they concerned about? I mean, there's the whole technology part of the story.
That's the first one. Remember, during the Cold War, during that entire period, remember the Cold War went all the way from 1917. It didn't just begin at 1945. It began in 1917 with the overthrow by the Bolsheviks of the Tsar of Russia, Alexander. And ever since that time, there's been this dialectic going on with the nation-state capitalists in Western civilization against the socialists in Eastern culture. And the bottom line is that as long as the Cold War was going on, the United States was never going to reveal any of the technology that they had encountered with the Roswell crash. Okay, and they were going to try to weaponize it. The old saying, the Sufi saying, when a pickpocket meets a saint, all he sees are his pockets.
Right.
Okay, and so they're coming at it from that perspective, that worldview, which is a dialectical, confrontational worldview, that they perceive these extraterrestrial people as being a potential threat. Okay, and so that their job, it's their job assigned by both the Republican and Democratic Party. Your job is to protect the airspace, and not allow anyone to come into the airspace that isn't monitored and taken care of. And here these people are coming and going, and we can't admit that.
But that could have been a sell to the public. Be afraid, be very afraid. We need your money, we're developing this stuff.
They were still working on Russia at that time, because what they're doing is they're being able to fund their, at that point, $300 million a year to protect us against Russia. And now they're into doing anti-terrorism. This big one that one of our major assignments that all of us who care about this is to prevent the warrior class, the national security state people, from making this the ultimate other. These are the ultimate other, and that we have to spend more than $600 billion a year.
That was the warning of Werner von Braun.
That's exactly right, that they'll go right to this thing, and so you've got to stop them from doing that. So you have to establish a friendlier dynamic with regard to the
Which is what you're doing.
That's our job, is to do. But, so that's one thing, that one, which is comparatively predictable, at least for those of us who spent 30, 40 years in this area. That's one we have to be careful of. But on the other hand, Marshall Summers there's a whole set of books that have been written by this fellow named Marshall Summers, which is called The Allies of Humanity. And what he's talking about is the fact that there are, in fact, extraterrestrial civilizations that are very spiritually evolved and very compassionate and supportive of our human family here, very concerned.
Okay. Now he's lost it. There are
Now he's lost it.
He's lost it a
Come
while.
on, man.
Yeah, I know.
Did you notice this guy? This guy is purporting to be a Jesuit priest, right? And they call themselves the Society of Jesus, and he's quoting a Sufi saying. Like these people,
I didn't notice that.
They will never quote scripture. They are allergic to the word of God.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Seriously.
Huh?
Anytime the Pope speaks, he's a Jesuit, by the way. He's like the first Jesuit Pope. Anytime he speaks, it's not a pleasant experience. But see how many times he quotes from scripture. It's always goose egg. Ridiculous. But what he was mentioning there, before he did kind of go a little more off the rails than he already was, is there was the conflict between the USSR and the United States, and he mentioned those two extreme powers rubbing up against each other. That is always Satan's preferred method of operation.
Oh, yeah.
He likes to polarize an issue, get as many people into one camp as he can, and get as many people into the other camp as he can, and then smash them together.
Yeah,
and
pick a side.
They have this. Exactly. They have this saying, and it's ordo ab chao, which means order out of chaos. And so essentially, when these two come to a head and they meet, there's a bunch of chaos, but then you get to push the true intention, whatever it is your goal is, which is actually a point that's in between those two extremes. And how funny is it? We thought the Cold War was over. We thought the threat of nuclear annihilation was off the table. And it seemed to be that way for a good, 30 years since like the 80s, since Reagan's time. But even now, look at any of the headlines. It's U.S. versus Russia. U.S. versus China is a new thing. But it's those ideologies. It's the echoes of the past. And they're not quite done with them because they never reached their boiling point. They never hit that point where all chaos broke loose. And I think that's what we're heading towards. I think we are heading towards that final stage of deception. So
Absolutely.
It's been in the works for a long time, folks.
Yeah,
Really.
I truly believe that this build-up right here, whether it be a decade or next year, it could be very, very, very much a part of the major plan that is all coming together right now. And so that's why I'm really drilling this down and trying to get a grasp on this topic. So I think that's fascinating. What else is fascinating is what Angel from Vegas said. So if you don't know the story, this at the same time that this was breaking from the Pentagon, that they had this news release, there was a guy in Vegas, a young kid who was at his house, apparently working on his truck, he said, and his whole family was there, and the police caught something falling from the sky. They haven't found what that thing is. No one has seen it. But this guy, after that happened, he frantically called after hearing a loud bang in his backyard. He saw something he called not human and over 8 or 9 or 10 feet tall.
He said, we think they're aliens.
Yes, he said that.
He said, we think they're aliens. They look like aliens to us.
Mm-hmm. And it's all on a 911 call. You can go back and review that footage because it's been played so many times. Like, I'm sick of it. But it is interesting. But what's even more fascinating is this clip that the news doesn't play. So we're going to play something that the news doesn't play tonight. Watch this. This is really interesting. What he calls the aliens.
Which is, when that happened, when I was on the, which is, when that happened, when I was on a police call, when I was waiting for the police to come, they were still in the backyard. But when we went back there was nothing no more. Okay,
He's answering questions on Instagram.
What do you feel like? Ashley, okay. What did it feel like the first look you got at them? To be honest, it felt threatening. Like it's like looking at a demon. Like it was like something you don't want to see. Do you feel safe? I do not feel safe. You have a sketch of drawing them? I'm gonna try drawing later on. But do they look mean? Yes, they look very terrifying. It was definitely demonic. Yes, they are demonic. Because I know in the Bible says that the aliens are, demons and stuff, bad stuff.
So it doesn't say in the Bible that aliens are demons specifically, but I find it fascinating that he put those two things together without any maybe prompt from the chat or something like that. But there you go. I mean, it's directly from his lips. These things, if he did see a manifestation of this thing that's pretending to be very evil, it did what it was wanted to do, was get broadcasted throughout the entire nation, even the world, to say that it was mean, evil, and demonic. That's why I think these things are going to play both sides. They're going to play good cop, bad cop. There are evil demons that unless you do something, you will feel their wrath. And I think that's going to be the idea they're going towards. Any comments on that, Matthew, before I move on? I think we lost Matthew. Oh, he's frozen. No wonder he's not talking. Okay, so while he reconnects, Matthew, I think your internet is not functioning very well. I'm looking at my stream. How's the stream doing on my side? Can you guys hear me very well? Is my stream that has disconnected, or is it his? Let me hear you in the chat real quick. Stream is good. Yep, you're good, Brad. Perfect, Brad. Matthew's stuck in time warp.
Fine, Brad.
Matthew, you're stuck in a time warp, they're saying. You might want to disconnect and reconnect. Okay. Matthew, you're frozen.
Hello.
Oh, welcome back. Hey, oh, nope, you're gone.
Hello.
You're gone again. You. Okay, let's move on. Matthew, I might have to disconnect you while you continue to get back in there. You will need to either reconnect or reboot or something because something's going on with your connection.
I've reconnected.
Oh. No.
I've reconnected.
You're still frozen. Try rebooting or something. I don't know what's going on with you, but you'll have to reconnect, and I'll jump you out for a second. Okay. Unfortunately, we had to lose Matthew. Otherwise, it would have been like gut the whole time. I'm not sure why or what's going on there. If I'll come back in 5 minutes and try to get him back. I have eyes on him right now, and if he starts moving and waving his hand and it actually doesn't jerk around, then I know that he's good. So let's move on. This is fascinating stuff. If you are aware of Chris Mellon, Chris Mellon is a former deputy of defense. He says that these things are potentially not ships. They're gifts. Check this out.
Yeah, so one of the things that we don't know is, and first of all, it might not be a crash, right? There are different versions of these stories and different flavors. And one of them is that something was just left like a gift. Something just landed. That's a story. It's not, I'm not saying that's true. That's one version of the story. I think if we imagine for a moment that a country has recovered something like that, the military people, their natural desire is going to be to exploit it for their unique advantage, right?
Absolutely.
Rather than probably going public with it.
So there you go. So one of the Defense Department's own, Chris Mellon, suggests that these things probably aren't ships. They're technological gifts to us, and it just goes to show you they don't know what's going on, but they do know, according to the official, what the officials at the Pentagon are saying. They know that they have crashed and they have landed. That's what they're saying right now. So it seems that everybody is going forward with this exact same story. And even if you look on Daily Mail, some of the other news organizations are saying that they have other people that are also coming out from this stuff, and they're also saying the exact same thing as these guys are saying. All the stories are matching up. And so, again, either a big disinformation campaign, which if that's true, this is a mess. This is absolutely shouldn't be happening. Or they really have these physical manifestation deceptions, and this is shouldn't be happening either. Either way, something big is going down. I think we can all agree on that. I'm going to go back to Matthew and see if we're back in time here. Matthew, are you frozen? Or are you back? I see that it says strange and aliens on the back, but I think you're still frozen. So we're going to drop you back off. He is texting me, and he said, apparently my net is really weak right now, resetting the modem. As soon as I panned back to him, that's who he was doing. So that's why. I think I was seeing him pretty good, and then now, boom, I lost him. So let him reset, and he'll get back on here. Meanwhile, let's jump into Russell Brand. Russell Brand says that this will change the Bible. If you are familiar with Russell Brand, tell me what he is or who he is. All I know is he has a background in podcasting, and I think he was something else beforehand. Who knows who he is, but all I know is he's quite a character, that's for sure. Let's jump into that right now.
Ontology and epistemology are all now up for question. This is what we thought we knew, this is what we now know. You can't just be, oh, okay, bored about it, or using it as an opportunity for promo. This means you have to consider what consciousness is, what reality is. There are creatures that can travel around the galaxies, standing in that bloke's yard near his garage, and we're going to have to rewrite the Bible.
Have to rewrite the Bible. This is his tattoos. I think this is fascinating. Look, he has an eye tattoo on his arm, because that's not unusual. Oh man, I wish I made this one bigger. Well, he has a 33 tattoo on his can I zoom in on that? I don't think I can. 33 tattoo on his arm, and in this photo, this meme, he's saying, "I'm not a member of the Illuminati, I swear." Definitely has either been confused, or he is trying to push an agenda for sure. Something weird's going on here. So we have, it's 10:03 right now. Usually I run this for about an hour and a half, and but I thought, you know what? If I run out of time tonight, I can ditch this last clip. And it's a 17-minute story. This is from the Disclosure Project. So Stephen Greer just came out with he did in 2001. It was a big deal. Something called the Disclosure Project from the news. And then and just this last week, he did another one. But it wasn't as big of a deal. He talked most of the time, and he had a few interesting military men come up and actually tell their stories. This story was picked up by several news organizations. So I thought that was interesting. And I had read it several times, and I thought, man, why am I reading this so much? It's an interesting story. And just because it's so bizarre. I don't really have anything else. It doesn't really tie into anything we're talking about spiritually tonight, but I thought I would toss it out to the chat room to see if I'm going to poll the live chat to see if you want me to run this clip or not, or if you want to end now. Otherwise it's going to be a 17-minute story. That's just an interesting clip that you can kind of store, package up, store in the back of your mind, and just say, That's a strange event. That's a strange normal that's happening in your life. So I'm going to send this to the community right now. Let's see if that poll goes out. There we go. Continue the show further and watch this 17-minute clip. Yes or no. So go ahead and click yes or no on that, and we'll see what we get. I'll let it go while we'll also check on Matthew to see if he's reconnecting. It looks like he is coming back online here, but he is wave to me, Matthew, if you can hear me talking to you. I can see you. Okay, it looks like he's back. I'm going to bring him back into the chat, and he is frozen again. Really? I don't know what's going on. I can hear you. I can hear you fine. Wait. No, you're there.
Hear me?
No, your video's frozen, but I can hear you fine. I think, unless you froze up again. Oh, phooey. Why is this not working for you tonight? Oh, All right, we're gonna go, Matthew. I don't know if you've heard, but we are going into a clip. It looks like 94% of the people want to see this clip I have going. It's a longer clip, and so this will be the last clip tonight. But it's an intriguing story. So I thought I'd go ahead and share it while you are frozen there, Matthew. I feel like I'm talking to the top of your head, but I'll run the clip now. How about that? Oh no, what's going on? Brad, I can't read it. It's blurry. What does it say? What does it say, audience?
Everything is.
Okay. This is crazy. All right, I think we need to run the clip. There we go. Check this out. Painful. Here we go.
So the next gentleman I'd like to introduce has become a figure of great support for us. He's a Marine who in 2009 in Indonesia had a direct encounter with one of the man-made operations, and he is Michael Herrera. He has very courageously come forward. The first time he contacted me, because I know of these sort of operations that he came across on his mission, I told him that every single person I knew who knew about what he had seen had not lived to tell this story. He is enormously courageous. Thank you, and welcome to Michael Herrera.
Well, thank you all for being here. What I'm about to tell you hasn't been something that I've disclosed until recently in the help of Dr. Greer, among other people, so I appreciate your help with this. In 2009, my unit, which was most decorated infantry battalion in the entire Marine Corps, which was 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, was called in to do humanitarian assistance operations out in the Philippines, which was Operation Quetzana, which we were attached to the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, which conducts maritime operations all throughout Southeast Asia, in conjunction with the 7th Naval Fleet, which houses one landing helo deck, or LHD, among LPDs, which is what I was on, called a USS Denver. Ironically, that's where I'm from, so kind of felt like home. Now, during that operation in Quetzana in the Philippines, they had actually heard that a tsunami and earthquake hit the western part of Sumatra, which is western Indonesia, Padang City more specifically. Out of all the ships in the 7th Fleet, the ship I was on was the only one that was routed to that location, which was oddly strange, but then again, this is my first humanitarian operation, so I don't know the logistics of it, but if the skipper of the ship would probably know that information. So this happened September 30th. We ended up getting called and dropped anchor around October 8th. We are briefed in the ward room, which is the officers' mess, where they eat like their cafeteria per se. We're briefed that there is some of President Obama's family members that are present on either in the city or somewhere near there. They had a SEAL platoon that was ready to go to retrieve those people. Us knowing well that Indonesia is also the 2nd largest terrorist capital where they train these guys, and they'll send them up to whatever theater of operation where anybody wants a piece of the United States, they ship them up to go handle it. So we know that well, and we were then briefed that we were going to be armed during this operation, just to also provide security for the transportation coming to basically drop off medical supplies, sheltering items, food, purified water, things like that. So they ended up selecting certain Marines to go ahead and do this. We were only in sticks of six Marines, so it had NCOs on top of other Marines to help with that. So we again boarded CH-53 Super Stallions, which are gigantic helicopters that are roughly 100 feet long. I love the design of them. It's my personal favorite. But we ended up boarding this on the ship, and we flew to the southwestern part of the city, which is Padang. Looked a lot different through satellite imagery that I've recently seen. Back then is a lot different, especially because most of it was decimated, on fire, rubble, flooded, you name it, basically the worst kind of scenario you could ever see. From then, once we touched down on this landing strip, it took probably about 2 minutes. And then again, the pilots got radio confirmation to go ahead and drop us into certain parts. So we again dropped to a hasty LZ, which took probably about 6-7 minutes to fly to from that position. And we dropped to a hasty LZ. We got off the bird, and what we were instructed to do at that point through the briefing was to push to a high ground at least to get better observation. As a Marine, the tactical advantage that you get from having a observation from a top point is you see everything clearly. You could also coordinate from there. At that time, we had did a tactical column, which we are able to get eyes on pretty much everything, especially with 6 Marines, so we have the effective communication at that point. If we need to engage, we can properly do it within the amount of ammunition we've got, as well as the weapons that we got, which were only M16A4s. So at that point, we decided to push forward. We trekked up about 300 meters. At this time, I have a Panasonic camera that has the ability to take photographs. It has a ability to take videos, obviously. When we got to this high point, I was taking video camera, and I had actually turned to the north, which just kind of slopes down. And right there was something that stuck out like a sore thumb, especially with jungle terrain, things like that. Vegetation, very green stuff, was something that stuck out so well. It's always going to be basically imprisoned in my mind for the rest of my life, and it has been for 14 years, was something that was rotating, and it was transitioning between colors like a light matte gray as well as a dark matte black. So in between, that's what it kept, and it was very smooth. We had all looked at each other as we got online, and we decided to investigate. The further thing I want to say is that I actually took pictures and video of this before we actually trucked down. We had a dump pouch where we basically, if we expend ammunition, we want to retain our magazines, so we put those there. So I dropped my camera in there, and we decided to go down. We didn't have any communications, which was weird, and that was a very odd thing, and it's something that either could have been good that we didn't, or it could have been something that could have been very bad. And it just however you want to look at that. Once we got down this slope, we were approximately 150 meters away from this craft. When we all got to the point where we could see it, just like behind here, again, Mr. Schratt, phenomenal job. You can see that the craft here actually was roughly about 300 feet. And the reason why I know this is because you could fit 3 of the helicopters that we flew in on underneath this craft. It was rotating a clockwise motion. The panels here that you see, the black ones, at least 3 of them, was like a Vanta black, very dark. I have no idea what that was. On the very top, there was like a pyramid structure that you could see the shadowing of it, which would elicit that was a pyramid structure. And it had an audible hum to it. Kind of like a guitar amp if you were to unplug that, or like a transformer. It's very audible. If I was to hear that sound again, I could tell you, okay, it's probably this thing or something similar to that. It's very distinct. And the way that it was floating, which was about 10, 15, 20 feet off the ground, it was kind of a very eerie thing to see because I've never seen anything like that in my life. When we got up to that point, we were then intercepted by a team of soldiers or rogue military force, if you will. The most concerning thing about this is they all had American dialects. They had American gear. They had OTVs, black. They had black camouflage. They had very similar setups to what we have, but more high speed, something what you would see special operation groups these days have. They had no insignias on. They had no ranks. They had nothing that would signify who they were. They had black ball caps. They had M4A4s that were equipped with ACOGs, which was a step up from what we were currently issued, as well as PEC-16 IR illumination devices that you use for night vision and night patrols, things like that. So we were engaged. We had 8 of them put the drop on us. You could audibly hear them blow the safety selectors off. They basically started screaming at us, telling us what we were doing, we were not allowed to be there, who were we with, what were we doing there, threatened that they could kill us right then and there. We could get lost in the jungle. They could throw us out of a helicopter if they needed to. It was very nerve-wracking at that point, especially looking to my fellow Marines and seeing the reactions on their faces too. We were all freaking scared, to say nonetheless. So with that being said, each Marine was then patted down along with myself. We had our weapons taken from us. They were basically cleared in condition 4, which means they had no round chamber, no magazine in. They dumped our magazines out of our mag pouches as well onto the deck. And then again, because of Marine Corps order, how things are with that, we were told to keep our military ID in our left breast pocket. So they knew that. They asked for our military identification. We gave it to them, obviously, because they have guns in our face. So Provided that to them. They had something that looked like modern day smartphones, but this is 2009, so it's not really as high tech compared to obviously today. So they took some pictures of our military ID, and then they had something that remind me of a BAT system, which is a biometrics tracking system that we would use. This is for insurgents or anything like that. It would take fingerprints, it would take retina scans, it would take pictures of them and document them. So if there was other militaries that were coming to relieve our post, they would actually have this information too to know who they are dealing with. That's what it reminded me of, and I had trouble scanning the IDs. As this is going on, we're going back between these guys as well as what's going on in the background. At that time, there was 4 of these trucks, which were F-350s. They were up-armored. They were pretty beefy. They had weapon cases that I've seen before because of something that we've actually loaded weapons into. They had 2 of them that were in the back of each truck. They also had these containers that was illustrated right here, which come to find out through recent revelations from yesterday from somebody who came forward to Dr. Greer. I don't know who they are, but what they had told him and what he has told me is that this gentleman knows exactly what these were used for because they had like a cylinder on the front, which is either for oxygen or what I hypothesized was for vacuum sealing, which believed me to suspect that they were smuggling narcotics or drugs. Come to find out it's more disturbing than that. This gentleman has first-hand account with this and says that it was for people. It's very disheartening, especially because that part of the world have already gotten ravaged, and it's something that is very hard to see right now because of what I've witnessed, and it's very disheartening. And this is why I'm up here. So they loaded these onto this platform that you can see right there, and as I got up there, like I said, I was going back and forth. These guys are still searching our stuff. They're still, pointing their weapons at us. And after the last 2 trucks that I saw that actually got onto that platform unloaded, they had 4 guys in each truck that would unload everything. However they did it, I can't tell you because, again, I was focused on this as well. And these trucks drove off. As that happened, this platform actually rose up off the ground itself. The top part of the craft actually met it down in the middle like this, and it formed into one solid piece. It floated right above the tree line. As soon as it was able to break that tree line, it actually had on the corners of each of these, which was an octagonal shape craft, by the way, on each corner it emanated a light. It was either red, yellow, green, or blue. Only those 4 colors I can distinctly remember. It didn't make any additional high-pitched sounds when it rose up. Once it got past that tree line, it shot over to the left, basically where the ocean was, at so fast, I would estimate probably 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles an hour instantaneous like that. There was no rotor wash, no exhaust that would disturb the trees, vegetation. The coconuts that were on these trees were not even touched. It produced no sonic boom. This thing was so fast. So as that happened, they basically had told us to turn around. As we turned around, kind of a couple things that went through my head at that point was that we're done. They actually started loading our magazines into our back into our vest in a way that would be hard to get them to put them into a weapon and to actually, charge the weapon and actually put it around in a chamber. So they put those in. They actually slung our M16s on their back for us, but when they did it, the Marine Corps not really issued the best gear, especially at that time. So the slings back then were, I would say, subpar quality, cut my neck pretty good, and they kind of went in that motion and made sure they were secured so we couldn't really get them as easy. And they escorted us back up this slope. And they told us we were not allowed to look back. 2, that we were not able to talk about this. They were actually, 2 of the guys were actually talking about either, hey, should we smoke these guys right now? That's what they kept saying. It was kind of feeding more into the fear at that point because, again, I don't know who these guys are. I know they had American gear. They had American sidearms as well. If these guys have actually taken an oath like we have, and then why they're going against people like us and even willing to kill servicemen who just even stumbled onto this, it just blows my mind, and it's very sick. So as we broke atop this hill, we decided to book him. And we ran back to the LZ. There was a gunnery sergeant that was attached to the ship. I don't know this gentleman personally, but I know he's very unhappy with seeing us because we had actually had our weapons slung. We were not combat effective at that point if we needed to be. He asked specifically why we were. We didn't tell him exactly why. We just came up with an excuse. And then we waited for the next CH-53 to approach, and we got on board, flew back to the ship. We turned our weapons in back to the armory. We took our gear off back in our berthing, and we went upstairs to be debriefed by an admiral that I've never seen before, and it was kind of somebody who was out of place. I don't know if he has any kind of relevance to this at all, but if that's the case, if he does, I hope he comes forward with that information. It would be very helpful. So as we're going to go ahead and fast track to a couple days later, which we end up in Subic Bay, which is like the party town in the Philippines. So we had 3 days there of liberty. The first night I come back, because we had to report back to the ship each night, we were not allowed to stay out in town. My rack was on my camera was on my rack, and the memory card that was in it was out, and my battery was out of the camera, missing as well. So all of that was missing. The only thing that was there was the camera. Mind you, I had my locker secured. I had other stuff that was basically piled on top of that camera. So whoever did it knew what the hell happened. So after that, the other thing that was also notable with that was each of the Marines that were with me also had their cell phones taken that they brought. Even though they didn't bring them on the mission, all their stuff was missing. The other stuff, the other people in the actual platoon never had their stuff touched. It was only us 6 that were affected. So fast tracking back when we returned back to Okinawa, one day I had got a call from the duty that was in the barracks. Each barracks has like a duty of Marines that are, making sure there's still order, things like that. He had been told that I needed to go up to the CP, so he informed me, so I had hightailed it up there. And oddly enough, there was nobody in the building, except for one gentleman who was wearing Air Force dress blues that was missing a name tag, which I understand in Air Force policy or regulations that they were supposed to wear a name tag, and he did not have that. I gave him the proper greeting of the day, gave him the salute. He had pulled me into an office, and he had said, "You are not allowed to tell anybody in your chain of command. I don't care if it's a general. I don't care if it's anybody. You are not allowed to talk about what happened. You can go to prison for this, or you could be killed." So he slid over a non-disclosure agreement, and it had 2 things that I can recall to this day as I quickly skimmed through it, because again, I had thought we were going to forget about this whole mess. And one was said TSSCI, and the other said Indonesia. There's only 2 things I can recall out of that. So I was forced to sign that. I signed it, and I had got the hell out of there as quick as I could. Before I did that, I tried to ask him who he was, and he would not tell me who he was. So I hightailed it back, and I have not spoken about it ever since I was able to recently, because what the law passed. But that is my account for you guys. This is also an urging for anybody in Washington, D.C. as a political figure. Please get this under control, because there are people who are either being hurt or killed by this, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Please.
Fascinating story, man. There's a lot of things that could be said about this right here. I'm actually very interested. We have Joseph Jordan in the chat tonight. I'm curious about your take on that, is because there's a lot of things that could be said about it, and it's either let's just go from the very top. It could be disinformation. It could be an elaborate story amongst several people. Notice that there wasn't any of his platoon, I guess that's called, members that came along there. However, he said there was more, and that they didn't want to, and that many things happened afterward. It could be. Let's just throw that on the table. It could be that a lot of these guys that went down there in his group, his platoon, experienced something all at the same time in their head. They give a lot of detail. That's what amazed me about how much detail was involved in that. I'd be interested to even interview him, to ask him if he remembers any smells, if he could remember what happens on different sides of him. I'm listening to what Joe might say, what was happening in this. And I'm going to try to bring back Matthew and see if I can get back him. So if he has anything that's happening right now. Matthew, are you with us? Or are you frozen again?
Mason Bradley. He's a Freemason.
Okay. Is he a Freemason? What do you think about this?
I'm still breaking up, Bradley.
A little
still
bit,
in the
but not
time
bad.
warp. No? Okay. Freemasons tie. The tie, Bradley.
What are you talking about?
He's wearing the compass and square of the Freemasons.
Was he really? I didn't notice that.
And I sent you a picture in Discord.
Oh.
Private.
Okay,
Our
let me
little
check
direct
that.
message. It's him when he's younger, so he's not as heavy set as he is. Just so you know, because he looks like a different person, but it is him. I verified. And he's wearing the compass and that picture.
Man, they do not want you talking tonight, Matthew.
They don't. The Masons are trying to silence me.
All I'm getting is the Masons.
Talking about getting him.
Poor Matthew. Okay.
You're talking about getting him on the show.
No, this guy. No, I was talking. I was saying I'd be interested to query him, but I'm not sure. Man, I want to see this picture, but I can't bring it up. Why can't I bring this picture up of Mr. Freemason? So you're sure he's a Mason, huh?
I mean, he's wearing the Masonic symbol of the Freemasons, so I don't own. Do you own any of that?
I don't own a compass and tie. That's a compass on my tie. Let me see. Square on my tie. Yeah, well, if he's a Mason, there might be something to that. That's interesting. I'm gonna jump back to the comments. I'm trying to get back to my browser that has all the live chat because I'm curious if Joe has any comments on it here. He says not enough information. I agree. Yeah, I agree. There's not enough information here. Need to ask more questions to evaluate what's going on here. It's a fascinating story though. And that's why I said, store it in the back of your mind. I think we're going to find out more information as time goes on. I wish there would be more people that came out about this because it's a bizarre story. It's something that we cover here, the stranger things that happen. So Matthew you're still cracking up quite a bit, but I think
pain.
the pain. Okay. I'm going to have to silence you because I don't know when you're talking and when you're not. But
good night. I love you all.
As he freezes in that position. Is that all right? You heard it from the best. Matthew says, good night. I love you all. He's the one that said it tonight, not me. Friends, this has been a bizarre night. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to pray us out here. Father God, thank you so much for giving us time to go over this bizarre stuff and understand what's going on in this world. We know that at the end, we're not going to be able to trust our own senses. We're going to have to rely wholly and fully on you and your lasting love because we can't do anything on our own. It's you that can pull us through all this. So we ask in your loving name that you would carry us through this bizarre situation that's coming upon us. We love you, God. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, friends, I'm Bradley Burnham. This has been Pure Strangeness, Absolute Normalcy, Strange Normal. See you next time. Thanks for watching this segment. Subscribe to our channel and join us every Thursday night for more daily strange topics and more. Find us on Discord by accessing patreon.com/strangenormal. See you there.